There was a man, somebody had stolen his wife's credit card. A couple of months later, the company called him and said, "Sir, we got good news. We found the credit card." The man said, "Tell the thief to keep it. He spent less than my wife." Dear friends in Jesus Christ, today is the fourth Sunday. It's called Rejoicing Sunday. That's why we can see that it's a pink chasuble. We do wear the pink chasuble, not pink, it's called rose chasuble. On the Advent time, fourth Sunday, because the Christmas is near, or we can say Easter is close by. Today's gospel puts before us a man who was blind from birth. When Jesus saw him, he simply presumed that the man wanted to see. Without waiting to be approached by him, Jesus took the initiative to cure his blindness, spreading paste made from spittle and dust on the man's eyes and sending him to wash it off in the pool of Siloam. It is a reasonable assumption that those who are blind want to see, and that those who see imperfectly want to see fully. Yet, while that may be true when it comes to seeing physically, it is not always true when it comes to deeper form of seeing. There are certain forms of blindness that we can become attached to. At this deeper level, it is sometimes the case that we see much less than what is there to be seen, because we only see what we want to see. The Pharisees in today's gospel are a good example of this limited form of seeing, because Jesus broke the Sabbath law, and the Pharisees understood it. They saw Jesus as sinner. Even though there was strong evidence to the contrary, they refused to see it. When the man blind from birth, now healed, pointed to the evidence and said to them, "If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They threw him out, declaring that he too, like Jesus, was a sinner. Here was a group who refused to see, yet they repeatedly said in the story, "We know, we see." They were blind to their own blindness. For this reason, Jesus' last words to them were, "Since you say, 'We see,' your guilt remains." It turns out that they are the real sinners, not Jesus or the man from birth. The failure of the Pharisees is potentially the failure of us all. Our insight into people and into situation is of necessity limited, because we are human. The first reading declares God does not see as human sees. Human look at appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. We cannot see the Lord as the Lord sees. Our seeing will always be, to some extent, a superficial seeing. We can easily get other people wrong, as the Pharisees got Jesus wrong, in spite of all their study and learning. Because our ability to see, to really know others is so limited, the judgment we make about others on the basis of that seeing will often be the wide of the mark. The statement that the Pharisees make in the gospel, we see, we know, always need to be qualified with the statement. Maybe we do not see after all, perhaps our judgment is wrong. We need to give each other the freedom to be able to say from time to time, I got it wrong. There was more there than I saw. There is a tendency nowadays to devour people, especially those in public life, who admit to having made a wrong judgment. Surely, what really matters is not so much making a wrong judgment, but having the but having the honesty to admit the wrong judgment and the desire to learn from it. At the end of the gospel, Jesus declares that blindness is not the real sin. Blind, if you were, you would not be a guilty. The sin consists in being blind while persistently claiming we see. The man born blind has something to teach all of us. Immediately after the gift of his physical sight from Jesus, he was blind to Jesus' true identity. He initially refers to the one who healed him as the man they called Jesus. It was only over time that he came to see Jesus as a prophet, and then as someone from God, and finally as Lord and deserving of worship. Although initially blind to Jesus' full identity, he was open to seeing more, to growing in his relationship with Jesus. We too will often find ourselves blind to the true identity of Jesus. We may have been brought up to think of someone or a whole community in a certain way. The statement we make about them will often express a very partial truth. What matters is that we acknowledge our blindness in regard to others, and that we admit that our way of seeing them is necessarily very limited. Then we will be open to learning more about them and being shown more. We will be willing to take whatever steps are necessary to move from blindness in their regard to sight, from a very limited perspective on them to a much fuller form. If this is true of our relationship to others in general, it is even truer of our relationship with Jesus. If there is more to other than meet the eye, this is supremely the case with Jesus, of whom the fourth evangelist said, the world itself could not contain the books that could be written about him. The man in today's gospel can speak to us all. His journey of coming to know Jesus more fully and to follow him more courageously is the journey we are all called to make.